My grandfather literally, selected the site and put his shovel down and said, "This is where we're going to build the university, and this is how it's going to be laid out."
And my grandfather was immensely proud of the university and proud of the legacy that he had left behind.
To build a really strong faculty, that's what he was interested to do. That was his pioneering spirit to me.
Yeah.
Hey, it's John Grossi. This is the 908 Show, and I'm standing here on Long Beach State's beautiful campus. When people think of Long Beach State, a lot of people think about the 49ers, the beach, the pyramid. A lot of people also think about Prospector Pete, the university's longtime mascot. Did you know that Prospector Pete was named after an actual person? It was actually named after P. Victor Peterson, the very first president of the university, the man who took what was once just desert land and turned it into the huge, thriving community organization and college that it is today. Let's learn more about P. Victor Peterson, the man that they called Prospector Pete.
He came from Northern California, San Jose State, and he helped found LA, CSU LA, 2 years before this college. He was a scientist. He was kind of a guy who was, according to people who were there at the time, more at home in a lab, really.
And his whole philosophy of education was that a professor is supposed to clarify, not mystify. And he wanted that to be a firm foundation.
My grandfather's passion and how proud he was of what he and everyone that was involved in growing the university, what that meant. On some level, Prospector Pete is named after my grandfather, Pete.
They had these 49er days. They were a big deal. But it was like a fun school activity that everybody got involved in.
They all dressed up in 49er outfits, and so they designated that he was going to be Prospector Pete.
They thought this is kind of a gold rush kind of thing, gold rush for education. So the things they came up with was Prospector Pete, gold rush, and the name Pete came from P. Victor Peterson, the first president.
P. Victor, but the kids called him Dr. Pete, and that's how that Prospector Pete came.
So it was always kind of this fun fact, for me, just knowing that he was named after my grandfather. So I'd see him at games, or I'd see him on campus, and the logos everywhere. Yeah, it just makes me feel good.
The mascot of Prospector Pete plays off the traditional narrative of the prospector, a rugged man risking it all to find gold in California. Unfortunately, this narrative doesn't match with the sad realities of what often happened when prospectors came to California.
The gold rush is a moment in time, at a time where California is quite distant from the rest of the United States. It was difficult. You came overland. That route was difficult. Coming around the Horn was really difficult and expensive, and you put up a ton of capital to do this. Many of the guys that came, when they got here, they found that the work was really difficult, and the economy here was so elevated because it was so far away from everything. Majority fail and go home.
The early California prospectors met all sorts of hardship like travel and expenses. Prospector Pete in Long Beach had a lot to deal with as well, as far as resources, timing, and starting a college from scratch.
He built this thing from nothing when it was bare land, begging the state for money, begging. It was very tough to get resources. Peterson would drive around trying to get a site. I don't know if this is going to work. We don't have the money.
And that's when Whaley offered the apartment. He called the superintendent of schools and said, "We'll open."
And they're like, okay, and we'll start building a college. And they used this apartment, and they cleared it out, and it wasn't beds and stuff. They put in like classes and stuff like that. Show up on the first day of class, and there's skill saws, and sawdust everywhere. And the living room was, education, and the bedroom was, they used to joke it was home ec or something. But there were no books. They had to borrow them from LA. They didn't get them until like December of 1949, and it was nutty.
Despite the crazy hardships that came with starting a college in Long Beach from nothing, it was his prospecting spirit that kind of led him to create this amazing college with this vision of clarifying education, not mystifying it.
One of the first things he did was to plan a recruiting trip across the country.
And he traveled all over the country saying, we're starting this new school in California, and he'd go to the farthest, coldest reaches of the country where there was more competition. People think California, palm trees, new opportunities, and people came.
And the quality of the professors, was just amazing. He wanted to build a strong faculty. That was his pioneering spirit to me.
In the first year of the college, there were only 169 students that enrolled, and by the end of P. Victor Peterson's 10-year reign, there were over 10,000. It's a pretty amazing story, this idea of starting a college out of nothing and creating something unbelievable in Long Beach State. I mean, in many ways, Prospector Pete, P. Victor Peterson, did strike gold in Long Beach with education and building an incredible campus.
It's amazing, isn't it, how the college has grown so much. And I think that's great. I think it's wonderful.
He came down from Northern California and forged the path and created an opportunity for generations to come.
He was very successful. It was like a kind of a gold rush of education. And
together they built a truly amazing campus, and that's grown wildly over the years. Something that the community benefits from, and I mean thousands and thousands of people benefit from. So yeah, I would consider that striking gold.
Thank you so much for watching the 908 Show. I'm John Grossi, and remember, life is great in the 908.